Ciao tutti, and welcome back to the Shift Happens F1 podcast. I'm Elena, and I'm actually still kind of speechless. I'm absolutely still on cloud nine from this past weekend, and I will be riding this high for quite a while. I'm, I mean, whenever Charles Leclerc wins, it's just like the world is bright colors, and there's rainbows in the sky, and everything's just happy. But there's also this like looming feeling in the back that like this is a dream and I'm gonna wake up and it's gonna be like Max Verstappen won the Monza Grand Prix again and I'm gonna be like, dang it, man. But no, I am still so happy that he won not only Monaco but Monza. Like he won two out of three of my favorite races of the season. And honestly, I think those are the two best ones he could have won. I mean, he won his home race after so many years of not being able to do it, broke the Monaco curse, and then he won in Monza as the underdog in a race that was not even he was not supposed to win um this past weekend. And I think it's an absolutely amazing drive that he did, and he definitely did so well. I've never been more happy and frustrated at the same time because I am currently studying abroad with FSU, which is my school in Florence, Italy. So I am in Italy right now. Um, I really wanted to go to the race, but there was nobody that I could meet up with that I had to go to see the race with. But I did get to go to one of the bars here and I got to watch it. So I'm a little frustrated that I was like a 3 hour train ride away and I wasn't there, and then he ended up winning. So I was even more upset that I wasn't there. But I think that it was an absolutely amazing race from him, and that this is going to be a good trajectory for the team for a while. So yeah, Charles Leclerc won in Monza, home of the Ferrari, and like I said, it was a surprise to everyone. I mean, we really didn't see that this was supposed to happen. He started off pretty decent, didn't fall too far back once the race started. And I mean, we saw um, when he pit, when the team made him pit. Oh, also, excuse any noises you hear. My walls are very thin. These are old Italian Florence homes and apartments that I'm staying in, so you'll probably be hearing some beeps or some Vespa revving. So, but no, when the team had pit him on lap 16, he actually really got angry on a radio that they were making him pit because he pit a lap later than Lando. It looked like Lando was doing a pit stop strategy to undercut because Ferrari had hit Charles a lap later, but he managed to turn it into a beautiful victory because in the beginning of the race, everybody was looking like it was going to be a one stop strategy for the race. And then as time went on, I think most of the teams ended up agreeing that it would be a two stop, but somehow Ferrari managed to keep those tires alive and they did a one stop. And that's essentially how Charles ended up winning the race. He managed to keep those poor tires going until the end of the race, and it was really truly impressive, and it was definitely something exciting to see. I mean, we saw how Carlos was pit after Charles, and I honestly thought Carlos was going to go super long and that they were going to pit Charles one more time and they were going to do a different strategy between the two drivers and see, who kind of ended up with the better one at the end of the day. But Carlos's tires fell off way quicker than Charles did. I mean, he was keeping up, and then all of a sudden we see that he's just like falling behind. And Leclerc still managed to keep his tires going. It may have been because he was in first and he had that clean air, and Carlos just wasn't, doing it right. I don't know. There's a bunch of little things that it could have been, but they just kind of fell off. And then Charles just managed to keep such a gap that he had just created such a long gap, and kept those tires well done and had clean air for the rest of the race that it essentially was just pretty much hey, just don't lose them too quickly and keep it steady. And that's how they won the race. I mean, that's what all the teams had decided because that's what McLaren had decided to do was that two-stop strategy. And then I think they were just kind of shocked when Charles managed to keep his tires well, and how he wasn't falling behind too quickly, which meant that it was much harder for Piastri or Lando to catch up to him essentially. And you know what? That was another thing that kind of shocked me this weekend was we saw kind of a McLaren masterclass a little bit during the Dutch Grand Prix and stuff like that. Like they managed to be a well-oiled machine. And I think that this is just another weekend where they just kind of lost it. I mean, just things just weren't going perfect for them, and I think it just kind of ended up just not it was just a bunch of things that I think just like added on to other things. But I Oscar Piastri completely shocked me. I mean, turn one, the move on Lando was, oh my God, was it impressive? I mean, I love seeing them race. We love to see it as I think Formula One fans. I think it was very remnant to Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen when they went at each other in Monza a couple years ago. It was definitely fun to see them kind of going at each other and it being relatively, like they didn't crash into each other, they didn't make each other like spin out, but it was an impressive move on Oscar's part. It was super gutsy. He did it so well on Lando. I mean, like it was perfect. And I think it was less of Lando having a bad start because we also know that like that's kind of what his kryptonite has always been a little bit, bad starts. And I think he had a decent start. I think it was just the fact that Oscar was truly impressive on that first corner with that move, and I think that's just what trajected him to be ahead of Lando for the rest of the race. And I mean, when we think about it with like our little fan hats on, it's so wonderful to watch. I mean, like that's the racing we want. We want those gutsy moves. We want that racing and that feeling of apprehension. But when you take off your fan hat for a minute and you think about the team and the drivers, and you think about it you think about it as a whole, essentially, it was really something that played a part in why McLaren didn't end up winning this weekend because I don't think anybody had it in the books to be a Ferrari win this weekend whatsoever. And I mean, like, put aside the crazy Delulu Ferrari fan mind that always thinks, this is our weekend, this is our weekend. I really didn't think it would be their victory. I thought it would be like last year, a Ferrari podium. I thought Charles would get on the podium and it would be a McLaren 1-2 again. But I mean, I just think it was McLaren's thing to lose. And then when we talk about like those whole like the McLaren rules or whatever like they said on the race, normally when we see something like that happen to, I'm going to put this in quote, first driver and second driver, McLaren didn't really give out those team orders that we normally see with, once again, quote, second driver overtaking a quote on quote first driver. The whole McLaren rules thing didn't give me the vibes of like Oscar and Lando don't get mad at each other and go crazy or, Oscar, you can't do that, give the place back. To me, it was more of what I think they've always been, which is, like the we love racing team. We're just a racing team who loves racing. It was more of a just like, hey, go race type thing. But I think with the whole like team who appeases everybody and like, oh Lando, it's okay. Oh Oscar, it's okay. That type of thing. I think it definitely gives them the stigma and reputation of not being a super hardcore team. And I think the fact that they're just like, oh, that's just them racing. They'll be fine. Like, not having that strong backbone, I think is going to be what does them in for not only the drivers championship, which we mentioned was a slight possibility anyways, but the constructors championship. And I think that this kind of like, oh, happy-go-lucky trying to appease everyone at the same time kind of attitude is it's going to be what makes them lose essentially this constructors championship, because just the attitude of the team this past weekend just doesn't seem to be like, oh, they're in contention for the championship. It just seems to be kind of, I don't know, the vibes were just off. I just don't know what they're doing anymore, because if I was a Lando fan, and I know you Lando girlies are like super duper duper passionate, I would be pissed at what happened this weekend to Lando specifically. I mean, like Oscar did so well on that move, and I just feel like there could have been something that Lando, I feel like strategy maybe could have been a little different to give Lando that kind of advantage over Oscar in a sense to get him back to P2, but it just didn't happen. And I'm sure Macy is not very happy right now with Lando being P3, because I think he could have been P2, P1, had McLaren and the team as a whole just kind of been a little different this weekend. But I know you Lando girlies are super passionate, so I'm sure you're not happy right now. But yeah, I think it's just something that they're gonna have to iron out, because I think they need to like figure out what they want to be. because it just seems like this is going to be something that makes them not win again, and it's just going to be Red Bulls given another constructors and drivers championship once again this year, even though they are the car that is faster, that is better. Like, their car is truly much better than Red Bull right now. They are, I think, the fastest on the grid. And what happened this week was just another one of their mistakes, and it cost them a 1-2. Now, another thing that was kind of crazy that happened this week was the Haas drivers. I mean, hello. I mean, we all know Magnussen's a little crazy on the road. He can be a little bumping and tapping and crash crazy, but it must have spread to Nico Hulkenberg this weekend because dang, I mean, like, they were just all over the place. I mean, so much so that Magnussen was given a race ban for Azerbaijan in 2 weeks. And I never, ever, ever thought I would see the day when the FIA would give a race ban to a driver because it's 12 penalty points that it takes to get to a race ban. It's a lot of paperwork for them. They always kind of like seem to find a way to like not give someone enough points to be a race ban, but I think they were just kind of like, hey, dude, we can't do anything else. You got to stop this at some point. And I think it's just the week that it happened to be. It's just the camel that broke, not the camel that broke the straw's back, the straw that broke the camel's back. So I just think it was the straw that broke the camel's back this time. And I mean, the teams can appeal this type of thing, but I think Haas, I mean, Magnussen isn't driving for them come next year. So I think that it is they're just gonna take the ban and they'll have to find someone to drive. Yeah, but Magnussen, so getting into who he crashed into Pierre on lap 19. It resulted in him getting 2 points on his driver's license and a 10-second time penalty. And I mean, Pierre ended up finishing the race, so it wasn't like he DNF'd or Magnussen DNF'd either. But yeah, I guess it rubbed off on Hulkenberg because Hulkenberg also crashed into another person. He crashed into Sonoda at turn one and on lap one, I'm pretty sure. And not only did he cause major damage to his car, but Sonoda, so much so that both of them went into the pits to have like their front wings replaced. And when Sonoda went in, he actually ended up retiring the car. The team had decided to retire the car and that there was too much damage on it. So no, Hulkenberg was, I'm pretty sure, given 2 points also on his license this race for his collision with Sonoda. But then not only was Hulkenberg the one to give a collision, he also like received a collision, and I'm gonna say this one is a collision that's in quotes because Daniel Ricciardo also got a 5-second time penalty for pushing a driver off the track, and it was Nico Hulkenberg who he did in turn one, which is, I'm pretty sure, why he ended up crashing into Sonoda in a sense. But no, yeah, Danny was given a 5-second time penalty, and then he went to go into the pits and serve it and change out his tires, and then that was kind of it, and he went on his way. And then what do I see a couple laps later but a replay of him getting his pit stop done? And I was like, I wonder why they're showing him getting a pit stop again. Like, why would they replay this? Like, it's Daniel Ricciardo, like, unless something went wrong. And what do I see? But when Danny comes in to serve that 5-second time penalty, and mind you, when they come into the pits to serve that, no one is allowed to touch that car for those 5 seconds or else it doesn't count. And what do I see but the front right pit crew guy touching the front wing of his car? And essentially, it meant that his 5-second time penalty that he served, which added on extra time to his pit stop, meant that he was also given by the FIA another time penalty, but this time it was 10 seconds long. So, I mean, that kind of ruined his race a little bit. I think he would have been so much better had this not have happened. I think he might have even ended up in the points. He qualified Tsunoda this weekend at the race. I think he did. I think he was doing pretty well this weekend, and I think it was just something that ended up ruining his entire race, and the FIA were just kind of like coming down on everybody today. So yeah, the Hasses were crazy. Sonoda DNF'd. Danny was given so many time penalties. The Aston Martins kind of disappeared. I think Lance Stroll did not do well. I think he ended up second to last or last. No, he ended up last because Sonoda DNF. So he was he was the last one to finish the race, but then like miles apart is Alonso, who finished 11th, which he was very, very close to finishing in the points. But I was like worlds apart for them. They kind of like disappeared in the background. Um, who also disappeared in the background were the Alpines. I mean, Gasly and Ocon kind of went at it a little bit, and I think in the middle of the race, kind of overtaking each other a little bit. But other than that, they kind of disappeared. Once again, Kick Sauber kind of disappeared. Um, they finished 16th and 18th. I mean, like, once again, just not a good race for them. So, I mean, it was kind of disappointing to see. Now, on the other hand, the other team who they're considered Formula B, was Williams. Williams kind of popped off this weekend. Hello. So not only did Albon get into Q3 in qualifying, but he finished the race in P9, earning the team 2 points. And then I'll get into this for a little bit, but poor Logie Bear, my Logan Sargent. Um, I mean, as most people know with Formula One, he was not at this race this weekend. He was not because Williams made the executive decision last week to replace him with Colapinto or Ca- I'm gonna call him Colapinto, so that's how I'm gonna say his name. But they replaced him with him, and I'm gonna say, mind you, I have no idea who this guy is. I have not looked up into anything with him, but I think he did an extremely good job in the race today because he finished P12. And had he not had that little moment in qualifying, I think he could have possibly have had gotten points this weekend and qualified much higher. The Williams was just looking really, really quick this weekend at Monza, and I think that they both did really well. And now, mind you, I don't know if this is a first weekend kind of thing where it was like beginner's luck type of thing, but I think he did well. He had good pace in qualifying. Just that little moment is what ended up kind of screwing him over there. But he did well in the race. I think it's a really great start, but we'll definitely see come this next couple races because they get a bit harder with the tracks. I think Monza is a typically easier track, and it's not as technical as the couple ones coming up next. So we'll see with that. But I mean, there's been a lot of backlash about them replacing Logan Sargent, and mind you, I am not a happy camper about this. I am a Logan Sargent fan, so I was definitely gutted when I heard this news, but I mean, it was an executive decision that the team had to make, and I think, unfortunately, I think they made the right one, as gutting as that is for me to say. But I mean, Colapinto is seeming to do well, and I mean, it's still a work in progress. We'll definitely have to see how it goes, but so far the payout is worth the price. So I kind of went through this podcast a little bit quickly, but also I have class coming up soon, so I had to find a way to record this and also like figure out my classes because it's the first day of classes actually today on Monday, September 2nd. So apologies for if this is a little bit of a quicker podcast or I'm talking pretty quick, but I'm in a bit of a rush. So let's get into the race results. P1 Charles Leclerc, P2 Piastri, P3 Norris, P4 Sainz, P5 Hamilton, P6 Verstappen, P7 was Russell, P8 Perez, P9 Albon, P10 Magnussen, P11 Alonso, P12 Colapinto, P13 Ricardo, P14 Ocon, P15 Gasly, P16 Bottas, P17 Hulkenberg, P18 Zhou, P19 Stroll, and then Sonoda DNF'd. And now, while the constructor standings haven't really changed around, they are definitely starting to get closer and bunched together. So first is Red Bull with 446 points, but right up on their tail is McLaren with 438 points. P3 is Ferrari with 407 points. P4 is Mercedes with 292. P5 is Aston Martin with 74. P6 is RB with 34. P7 is Haas with 28. P8 is Alpine with 13. P9 is Williams with 6. And then 10 is Kick Sauber still with 0. So next week is Azerbaijan, Baku. And now, like I mentioned before, this is not a track like Monza, where I think Monza is a pretty easygoing track. It's not got a lot of technical turns or precision turns. It's pretty easygoing. The only kind of major turn is really in turn one. And then when they're getting to the second half of the track before they get to the second to last long straight. Now, Azerbaijan is a very technical track. It's really tricky. Definitely going to be a good test to see how Colapinto does in those technical streets and tracks where there has to be a bit more precision and movement and strategy involved in the race, especially during the castle turns. I mean, we all know those, good little quotes of I am stupid by Charles Leclerc. Like, we all know that it's definitely a much harder track for the racers, and that it's going to definitely test Colapinto and some of the other people with strategy and making sure that, everything's planned out really well. So I am very excited to see how that one goes out. I will actually not be in Florence. I will be on a trip with FSU for that weekend. So the podcast may be coming out a bit later, that episode specifically, because I'm going to be trying to be getting back from our trip and then also figuring out when to record and stuff like that. So apologize in advance if anything comes out a little wonky with that. But yeah, I'm very excited for next race, and I am so excited that this was the turnout of this weekend. I've never been happier actually for this. I think that the two races for him to win, if they had to do two, I think these are definitely great ones for him to win. Monaco is home one, and then Monza the home of Ferrari. So I think those are definitely top two for Ferrari fans in that sense. So don't forget to check out the Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok of the podcast. Follow them on those platforms to ensure that you don't miss a single thing. And yeah, thank you for listening to the Shift Happens F1 podcast. Stay tuned and have a great weekend, guys. Bye.